Hi, I'm Nisha DeGaring, host of Good Things Utah, and I've been a longtime supporter of Todd's Beliefcast. I hope you find inspiration in the courageous stories shared by the amazing people Todd features on his show. The guests serve as shoulders for us to stand on, allowing us to see a little further and cultivate belief in oneself. Remember, you have the dignity and power to change. I encourage you to keep striving and believing in yourself. Enjoy today's podcast.
I want to take a moment to express my heartfelt gratitude to the incredible sponsors of the Beliefcast podcast. First, Craig from Craig Swap & Associates. If you need an attorney, he's your guy. Trustworthy, compassionate, always there when you need him most. Next, Wasatch Recovery, the greatest university on the planet, transforming lives one day at a time. Sandy from Minky Couture, the creative genius behind the most comfortable blanket you'll ever wrap yourself in. Comfort like no other. The visionaries behind Thread wallets. These wallets redefine style and functionality. Dave Philippi from Micro Plus, pushing the boundaries of nanotechnology and scientific research to bring us cutting-edge supplements for optimal health. The Ralphs and the Debenhams, creators of Mori Nutrition and Calm. Because if you're struggling with sleep, feeling stressed, or can't focus, Calm is your answer. Special thanks to the award-winning pianist Paul Cardall for his beautiful music that brings inspiration to every episode. And finally, Gab Wireless, letting kids be kids and giving parents the peace of mind they deserve. Right now, Gab is offering $25 off any device to new customers with no contract required. That's $25 off any Gab smartphone or smartwatch. Just go to gab.com/belief. That's where you'll get the best deal. That's gabb.com/belief. Thank you to all these amazing sponsors for supporting the Beliefcast podcast and empowering us to continue spreading positivity and inspiration to the world. And we are back. This is Todd Sylvester, your host of the Beliefcast. Thank you for tuning in. As always, I thank you guys each and every week because without you, this wouldn't even be a podcast. And also to my sponsors, without your help and belief, I wouldn't be where I'm at and to be able to get it out to the reach of the audience that we have now. So thank you so much. And, you know, I'm also so thankful for all the people who are willing to come on and share their stories. I mean, everyone has an amazing story. People are fascinating to me and astonishing at the same time. And today's no different. I have a really, really special guest today, Blake Hunt. Blake, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I've known Blake for several years now, and, you know, we met at some different circumstances, to say the least, right?
Yeah.
But I'm going to let you kind of share that. But I'm grateful to know Blake. We're colleagues now here at Wasatch Recovery. He is one of our therapists. He's fairly new into that field. But I have to say, like, you're one of the very few. I've been doing this for 30 plus years. You have the it factor. And what I mean by that is you're so good at calling someone out, letting them see where they're stuck, but at the same time you have compassion in your heart because you've been there. So I just want you to know I really appreciate working with you. And I'm learning from you every day, and it's awesome.
It's weird to call us colleagues now.
I know. Because we once were. I was your counselor.
Yeah. One time I was sitting in here, you know, I was like, my life sucks. Help me out. So it's really cool how it's come full circle.
For sure. Well, you guys are in for a treat today. I think where we'll start, Blake, is tell our listeners where you grew up and maybe a little bit about your childhood.
Yeah. So, you know, we see this all the time, right? Like we come in and we see people with just like a lot of trauma in their story, you know, and that's not my story. You know, I think mine just, and you and I have talked about this, they were these core beliefs I developed as a child, you know? And so it really starts out like my parents, you know, they had a rough background growing up. And so my parents really had an idea of like how to raise a kid, what the right path was. And they kind of held us to that standard. A lot of good things that came with that. And then like a lot of core beliefs I developed around that. And so my mom and dad, you wouldn't call them best friends,
Right.
I guess,
Yeah.
And so I just remember at a very early age, like just putting two and two together that like I was in my parents' wedding. They didn't really like each other around the house. And that, if I hadn't come along, like they wouldn't be together. And when you're 4 or 5 years old and you're putting this together, like you're not thinking about it like, oh, this is going to affect me for 30 years. You're just like, this is different. I'm different from other kids. And so as they kind of grew apart in their marriage, I internalized a lot of that. And so I grew up in a little town in Ohio called Westchester. And it was great. I had like my grandma and grandma, I don't know, 3 streets, down, like golfing with grandpa all the time, hanging out with grandma.
Nice.
And then there came this moment where my dad had a promotion and we were going to move to Phoenix. And it was kind of another critical juncture because I sort of had this like Mayberry life, like grandma, grandpa down the street and all these friends playing in the backyard, playing in the creek. And, it was like, we're going to go out to Arizona for 18 months. We're coming right back. And that never happened, know.
How old were you at this time?
Gosh, I must have been like 7 or 8 when this happened.
That's a tough time for a kid to move and go away from friends, and you're already kind of struggling with what was going on.
Yeah, and it's again like it's one of those things like my parents are doing their best, right?
Sure.
Like they've got me and my brother, they're paying bills. But I think it was like one, knowing the move was temporary, so I didn't try to make friends, like I had friends, but I knew they weren't going to be there long.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it sort of disrupted me in this weird way. And so the next time we moved back to Ohio, but a different part of Ohio. And it was like, this is it, we're staying here. And so I put those roots down again.
Okay.
This was like middle school age. So I put those roots down, like made best friends, playing baseball, doing all those things, like being a kid again.
Yeah.
I lost my grandpa during that time and he was like my best friend,
Yeah.
And I remember this moment, like my dad came home, I was shooting baskets and he came home and told me my grandfather had died and I started to cry and I just stopped. Like mid cry, I just stopped. And I never really thought about it till I came here, but that was like the first moment I realized like I could just sort of like compartmentalize and run away from my emotions,
Right.
I could be like, I'll feel this later. I'm not going to feel it right now.
This is too uncomfortable.
So, as the story goes, we move one more time. And that hurt, picking up those roots again. And we moved out to Wisconsin. And Wisconsin was the first time I didn't like walk in and immediately make friends, And there's this moment that happens that I'll never forget. I'm all alone in the lunchroom and this like heavier girl invites me to sit with her. And one of the jocks, like looks over at me. And he says, get used to it. Those are the people you'll be hanging out with here, And,
wow.
What's funny is I go on to play baseball with this kid. He becomes a friend, but I never trusted those friends, like they were my friends, but that was like the first time, it's like I always felt like the outsider in that friend group, right? And so anyway, it's like this perfect mix of, things aren't the best between my parents. I easily make friends, but I don't have a deep connection with them. I just don't really know who I am. And then somebody introduces me to alcohol, and it was like, I just remember I had a water bottle of vodka and, everybody else is like sipping it, seeing what happens. And I took like 2 sips. And I drank the whole thing and blacked out, puked all over the head of the PTA's lawn. And it was like, I went 0 to 60 like that. And And that's how it all started, you know. I just like,
So this is about the beginning of high schoolish.
yeah, I
time?
was probably like 15 or 16 at
Okay.
the time,
Yeah.
you know, kind of the normal age people like
Yeah.
experiment with these things. But I just remember like it had its hooks in me from the beginning, you know, just
Yeah.
like it was in that moment, I just escaped everything I was feeling, you
Yeah.
know, all the uncomfortability went away, all the nervousness, like all of those deep rooted insecurities just kind of left me.
Yeah. Still probably missing your grandpa
Yeah.
at that point as well, because you hadn't really processed that at all.
Yeah, so there was just a lot going on, and you know, that's how it went. I became a weekend drinker. I mean, I was playing baseball, and I went on to play baseball in college, and I was a weekend warrior kind of drinker. You know, got in a little bit of trouble here and there, but I was successful. Like I did really well in school, got a good job. You know, met a girl. Like I was doing all the things on the outside.
Sure.
Like I tell people, if you looked at just my LinkedIn page, you'd be like, "Here's a success story," you know. And I'm sitting there looking in the mirror, and I'm just like, "Oh my gosh!" Like
People only knew what was
if
going
they
on.
only knew what was really going on, you know. And so, you know, I just poured myself kind of into work, you know, and so it was always like, well, when I get the next promotion, I'll be happy, you know, or I get this next pay bump, I'll be happy, or, you know, like, well, it's because of my boss, but once I'm the boss, you know, and so I'm just moving companies, moving jobs, like, you know, making more money. I eventually move out to Park City from Wisconsin, and it's just like, every time I'm like, this is the answer I'm looking for, and it never is.
Right.
You know, and I start drinking more during the week. It's constantly catching up to me. And, you know, I married the woman I was dating at the time, but I was a mess, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, that was one of the most shameful things for me, I think, when I came here was just, I mean, she was a wonderful woman, and the things I put her through just really haunted me, you know, and that was tough, you know, and I put her through a lot, and I became a daily drinker, and, you know, it all culminated in like, you know, one day I was working, and she and I actually worked at the same company, and I went face down during a Zoom meeting. And so she calls the ambulance. They take me to the hospital, and, you know, they take my blood. I've got like a 0.42 blood alcohol level on like a Tuesday at 2, you know?
Yeah.
Not good.
Not good.
And the doctor comes in, he goes, you know, you're going to die. And I was like, yeah, I know I got to tone it back. He's like, no, you've got like weeks, you know? He's like, you're going to die. And that hit me, but I was just like, I got this, you know? And
well, real quick, to put it in perspective for our listeners, a 0.42 blood alcohol level is lethal.
Yeah.
Like you should have died from that.
Yeah, I
actually.
should have.
Yeah, anything above 4.0, you're at risk of dying. So just want to make that so our listeners understand.
Yeah, and I mean, on top of that, I was taking like benzodiazepines to sleep, and it was a lethal mix. You know, I look back on that now, and I'm like, God must have a plan for me. You know, because that's killed a lot of people I know.
For sure.
You know?
Yeah.
So anyway, you know how this story ends. I spend the better part of 2 or 3 years in and out of support groups, in and out of therapist's office. You know, about every 60 days I'm in the hospital. You know, nobody knows what to do with me. And I just, you know, I'm losing now I'm losing things, right? Like I lost my wife first, then I lost the jobs, I lost the dogs. You know, and most of all, my sanity, you know, you just lose all sense of yourself. And so I remember, I mean, it must have been the 14th time I'd been in the hospital. They took me to detox, and, you know, I'll never forget this moment. Like, they came in and they offered me treatment, and every time I just say no. And I was all ready to give that answer again. Nope, I got this. And something came over me. And, you know, whether you believe in God or a higher power or whatever, like something came over me that day where I was just like, yes, I just said yes, you know?
Yeah.
And in that moment, everything that needed to happen in my life happened. One of my best friends, I called him. I'm like, can you get me into treatment? He's like, yeah, you're not coming to our treatment center, though. You're going to Wasatch Recovery. And I'd never heard of the place, you know, and, but I'm like, well, if he works at another treatment center and he's sending me there, like, it must be a good place, you know?
Right.
And I made a promise to myself. I was like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it all the way. I'm going to do what they tell me. And, you know, I've got nothing left to lose. Like, I'm going to give this thing 100%, you know? And so that brings us to 2.5 years ago when you and I first met, you know, and I think I've showed you the picture. I came in, I weighed, I think it was 115 pounds, you know?
Yeah, from my perspective, when I first met you and seeing you come in, and it's very common, we see people coming here and they're a mess. And just, again, looking at you, if anyone off the street looked at you, they're like, man, this guy, how's he breathing? How's he alive? How's he functioning? And, I mean, you were skin and bones and, you know, just that hollowed look. You had this gray skin.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a rough look. And it's like, you know, at times, you know, when you see someone like that, you go, okay, is this dude going to make it?
Yeah.
You know, it was pretty a powerful scene to see in that state.
Yeah. So, you know, I came in, I was, you know, I just needed somebody to listen to my story and pat me on the back and say, you're right, you've been through so much, and nobody could have survived that, you know, and that's not what I got. I got you, who told me there was nothing wrong with me. And, I got Wendy, you know, who, not so nicely told me that, like, look, you get two choices in life, right?
Yeah.
You can be a victim to what happened and you can let it destroy your life and you're going to die. Or you can say, these are the things that happened in your life and, like, it's a gift, you know, because of what happened to you. Now you get to go out and do this with your life, you know, and without those experiences, you wouldn't be this person you are today. And so my little by little, you know, and, like, people are like, how'd you recover? And I'm like, I can't point to one thing, you know, it's just little by little, day by day, my mind starts to shift a little, you know, I start to see the beauty in life again. Like, I don't just look to find the negative in every situation, you know, and still had plenty of thinking errors, still had, you know, plenty I needed to work on, but, like, I could tell for the first time in my life, like, I had hope again.
Yeah.
You know, and you and I talk about it. It's like the most powerful feeling in the world is when somebody comes in hopeless and you just see that little bit of hope, that little spark in them reignite. And it's just like, it's magic.
It is. It's magic. We were actually processing someone yesterday, you and I together, of a person who was actually in that same scenario where we, you know, the darkness, and now we're starting to see this light turn on. It's like, man, this is why we do this.
It's, you know, and I love it because it happened for me, you know?
Yeah.
And I tell that to the clients all the time. I'm like, I came in here completely hopeless, you know? I thought this was the end of the road, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
And it actually was the start of a brand new life for myself, you know?
Yeah.
I didn't know it at the time.
For sure.
So fast forward a little, you know, I make it through inpatient here, and I go to day treatment, and I go to IOP, and what I notice is, like, still 5-6 months into this process, I love going to group therapy. All my peers are like, okay, I'm done with this, you know? And I'm like, I'm there early. I'm like, you know, the rest of the stuff, I'm like, yoga, but it's like, when it comes to group or individual therapy, I just love it. And I'm like, look, like, my career has been defined on, like, money, position, power. And it's like, it's brought me nothing but unhappiness, you know?
Yeah.
What would it be like to actually go and do what I wanted to do, you know? So I started talking to my therapist and peers, and I'm like, I think I'm going to go do this. Like, I'm going to go back to school, and I want to become a therapist, you know? And half of them look at you like you're crazy, and the other half are like, yeah, like, go get it, you know?
Sure.
And so my first job I worked at an autism clinic. I was like, let me get a service job, see if I like it.
Yeah.
And so I still remember it was like the first or second day, and I'm taking care of this kid, and he has an accident. And I looked to one of the other workers and I'm like, well, who cleans that up? And they're like, what do you think we have? Like someone that just comes. She's like, you go and clean them.
Yeah.
I was like, you don't understand. Like I've worked in tech. I've worked, you know, you don't understand. Like I don't do this, you know? And,
right.
and I did it. And it was still to this day, it's probably the best thing that's ever happened to me in my life, was that I had to get humble enough in that moment to do something that I thought was beneath me and just be of service to this child that, you know, couldn't control his bowels, you know? And I just remember going to group that night and being like, I think one day I'll look back on this day as like one of those days that changed my life.
Yeah.
You know? And that job was really hard, and I did it for about 9 or 10 months, but it taught me a lot about myself and who I was. And so I made the decision then. I was like, I'm going back to school. I'm going to work in treatment. And so I went and worked at Balance House as a case manager. Yep. And again, I was just like, I learned so much through failure and triumph. You know, I made a lot of mistakes, and you know, I still got to work on that temper from time to time. But you know, I made a lot of mistakes. But like, I was like, this is my place. Like, I love being around recovery. Yeah. And so I'm going to school, and then I reached out to Wasatch. My second semester, and I'm like, I want to come back, and I want to be a therapist here. And they're like, come on, you know? And so, you know, in the last 6 months I've been here, and it's like, it's amazing, you know, like I sit in this office with you now, and the first time I sat in this office, I looked up at the wall, and I'm like, the most delightful surprise in life is to suddenly recognize there's nothing wrong with you. And I'm like, this guy is an idiot. He's an idiot, you know? I'm like, I don't know what he smokes, you know? It's better than what I drink, because like this is BS.
Yeah, right.
You know, and now I come in and I read that, and I'm like, that's the most profound thing I've ever heard, you know?
Yeah, right.
And it's just, it's amazing. Like you talk about standing on the shoulders of giants, you know? Yes. And I always went through life thinking like I had to start with a blank sheet of paper and be the smartest guy in the room and like, you know, do it all myself. And what I realize now, right, is like I take these things from you, and I take these things from Wendy, and I don't have to do the legwork. You know, I do a little to make it mine, you know? Yep. And life's so much easier that way. You know, it's like I learn from the people who have gone through this before me. I learn from our clients going through this every day. You know, it's just like, I think the biggest thing like sobriety and recovery's taught me is that I need to go into every day willing to be proved wrong. You know, it's like I come into life with all these assumptions and all these beliefs, you know, but if I'm presented evidence that like something's different than I perceived it, I've just got to be open to that.
Open to it for sure. Yeah.
So
again, it goes back to that being humble and that kind of thing. I want to jump back a little bit in your story where you mentioned shame. You were feeling so much shame, like just, and for our listeners, especially, like, I mean, obviously drinking and drugs and blowing up our lives, it lines right up with shame, and shame is, I'm just this bad person. Talk about that, because that's a hard thing to overcome, because you had this belief, correct me if I'm wrong, that you were just this bad person overall. Yeah. So how did you navigate that?
Yeah. And shame is such a tricky thing, because it's so sneaky and you don't even realize it's there sometimes, you know? And, you know, so it started way back when I was a child, you know, just believing that my parents would be happier if I wasn't there, you know? And like no kid wakes up and decides that, you know, it's just one of those sneaky core beliefs we develop as a child. You know, but then once you start drinking and making bad decisions, you know, it just becomes a snowball effect, you know, and I describe it as like, you know, you take an action that's not aligned with your values, and that creates shame. And so you drink away the shame, and then you do something dumber, and it just becomes this spiral, you know, where it's like I keep making worse and worse decisions, and I feel more and more shame, and I'm just endlessly in this cycle. But I think the biggest one, was my ex-wife. I looked at the person I became in that relationship, and they were unrecognizable.
Yeah.
And the way I had treated her, she told me at one point, she's like, "You're a narcissist." And I came in here and I told Wendy, I was like, "I'm a narcissist." She's right. And she's like, "No, you might have some tendencies, right? But you're an alcoholic, when your life revolves around one thing, and you will sacrifice anything in your life to get that one thing, you're going to burn a lot of bridges." And that was freeing to me, realizing that there was still a good person in there. Alcohol had just consumed my life in such a way. All my other values went by the wayside, and you and I talk about this all the time. Like, one of the first steps of healing is getting back to what are my core values, right? Mm-hmm. The alcohol, the behaviors, all these things took away my core values. Like, how do I get back to those? And then how do I practice them every day? I'm not going to be perfect every day, but how do I strive to embody these values every day?
Yeah. I love that. And I think I totally agree that when we're in active addiction, it fogs our memory of who we really are. We just totally forget. And the good thing is, though, we never lose them, because those good traits were there. Yeah. Like, even from the day I met you on day one, I knew they were in you. Yeah. Such as the quote on the wall. I knew they were there. And I know when you hear that on day one, you're like, this is ridiculous. You have no clue, Todd. Yeah. But again, I just try to set the tone, because ultimately what we hope to lead anyone to, including yourself, is they're there. You just need to tap back into them. Yeah. And it's so cool now to be working side by side with you and doing groups with you and just sit there. I mean, there's times where I'm over there just sitting. You don't even realize this is going on. I'm going, who is this guy, man? He's on fire. And no one would have known you haven't been doing this for very long. No one would even have a clue. Yeah. And again, and I'm not just saying this to try to make you feel good. The point is, I can feel your passion in what you do, and I can tell you really care about the clients. Yeah. And again, it taps back into those core values, because you're worthy, and you see that these people, even though they're in that same spot you were, they're worthy. They're good. Yeah. And it's, I think it's part of, not being a victim to the past, but realizing what a gift, your past is, because I went through those things, when a client comes in carrying their shame or their burden, whatever it is, I can relate to that on a personal level. Right. I know what that feels like. I may not have been through those specific circumstances or felt exactly how you do, but I've been pretty close. You know, I've woken up in the morning and I haven't cared if I live or died, you know? So when you tell me that, I can relate. Yep. I know. And that's almost worse than wanting to die, just stuck in the middle of I don't really want to die, but I can't imagine my life without alcohol and happy. Yeah. So I'm just stuck in this middle ground of just trying to exist. Yeah. And being stuck in the middle, it's hell. Wow. That reminds me of a quote, and Benjamin Franklin gets the credit for the quote. I don't know if he actually said it, to be honest, but it goes like this: some people die at 25, but aren't buried until they're 75. Yeah. And I think anyone listening to this right now can relate, where I think we get a lot of us get to a point in our life where we feel like we're just existing. We're not really living. It's like we're just trudging through the day. That middle ground you're talking about, oh, this sucks. Yeah. I don't know if I'm going forward or backwards, and it's, again, this is why we do what we do, watching people get to that place where I don't want to exist anymore. I want to live. I want to take everything this beautiful world has, and I want to embrace it. I want to enjoy it, and I want to experience it. Yeah. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing, and we've seen the hard side of this, we've seen, for sure, the hard side, but also when you see people on the other side of this thing and you see that transformation in them, I think I said this the other day, it's like, you could offer me $1 million or to see that transformation in a human, and
I will take the transformation every day. Like just seeing somebody go from like, I want to die to living this beautiful life and impacting others is just like, what a gift, you know? And it's like, we get to come in and see that every day. And it's amazing.
You know, you've mentioned the gifts part, you know, like all the hell you've gone through. You know, you can play victim to it, or it's, you can look at it, you know, there's gifts that come from it.
Yeah.
Do you mind sharing a few of those? Obviously it's led you to doing what you're doing today, being the therapist, but I'm sure there's other gifts, you know, just in your everyday life that you've noticed. Do you mind sharing a few of those?
Yeah. There's so many to count, you know, but the first one, I remember when I lost my job the first time, you know, I had a pretty nice 401, like I could take care of myself, you know, but I was so concerned about money and finances that, I mean, it ruined me, you know. I wouldn't go get help because I was like, what will this do to my long-term retirement? You know, like I just future tripped every day about these things that are so far out there that I have no control over. And the greatest gift in the world is that I wake up in the morning, Todd, with like a quiet mind. You know, like, I don't know if you remember those days where you just wake up and your mind is like, you know, thinking about the next drink or thinking about, you know, whatever. I mean, it's just, your mind is just active 24/7. You just can't stay in the present.
It's miserable.
You know, and gosh, like, you know, Emily, my girlfriend now, she'll be like, sometimes you just sit around and you're so content. I'm like, it's because you don't understand how long it's been since my mind was just quiet, you know? And, you know, and
that is an amazing gift, to be able to quiet the mind. It's
such a gift. And like, honestly, I wake up every day and I want to go to work. Like, this is work, but it doesn't feel that way, you know? I get to be around my people, you know, at different stages of change, you know, but I get to be around my people. I wake up with a smile. I come in with a smile. I work with like-minded individuals, you know, like you've met Emily. I have like a wonderful girlfriend in my life and her three dogs.
Yeah, she's great.
You know, I mean, it's just, I tell people this all the time. Like 2.5 years ago, if you handed me a blank sheet of paper and you're like, write down what you want your life to look like, it would have been 1/10 of what my life looks like today. You know, like I wouldn't imagine any of these things, and like they're all amazing, and they're all the result of like the people in my life giving me really good advice when I need it. You know, it's like ultimately I had to make the changes, but I have so many people in my life to thank, you know, that steered me through it, you know, because I made mistakes. I did, you know, and yet, like, I just always had the right people in my corner to get me back on track and like moving in the right direction, you know, and I finally was willing to listen to them.
You know? No, I know, right? Finally. You know, I ask this question a lot to, you know, even the clients, and I get a million different answers. The definition of success. And I'd like to hear your definition. Like, if you had to write it down on a paper, what would you write down? And it may be different now than what you would have put maybe even 3 years ago.
So it's very different. And I think the way I would define success today is that I can wake up and fail in everything I do today. Everything I do today can be like a failure, and I'm happy with it because I'm learning from it. And like tomorrow I'm going to do better. You know, like I was a perfectionist. I was an achievement-based person, right? It was all about the end result, you know? And like today, success for me is that like I go out and I do my absolute best. You know, I show up in every area of my life and do my best, whatever my best is that day. And even if the results aren't ideal, you know, and I quote unquote fail, like it's not a failure. It's something for me to learn and grow from. And like the next time I do it, I'm going to do it better. You know?
Love that. I couldn't agree more. I think one of the best definitions I've heard, and I try to incorporate this in my own life, is success is being comfortable in your own skin. Right. And that's what I've noticed even with you, because I've known you through this process. like, especially when I'm in group with you, you are just comfortable in your own skin.
Yeah.
You're in your wheelhouse. You're dialed in, and it's just
Yeah.
like, it just flows naturally for you.
Yeah.
Right. We talked about that it factor. And I think it's just because you're comfortable in your own skin.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I have this, guy I know in recovery, and he's like, every day he's just like, I love my life, and I find it a little cheesy until I really think about it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I love my life. I love
Yeah.
the person I am today. I love the people in my life today. It's like, I have bad days, but I love this life. I wouldn't trade it for anything,
Oh, I love that. It's beautiful. Well, I want to share a quote with you.
Yeah.
And this quote to me describes you, because
Okay.
out of all the things, and it's by James Allen. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
But I want to share this with you. It's a
Yeah.
little long, but I want to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah.
Okay, because I think it really kind of paints a picture of where you've been and where you are now. And it goes like this: when one has reached the lowest point of sorrow, when weak and exhausted and overcome with a sense of powerlessness, he cries to God for help, and there comes no answering comfort and no succor. Then, discovering the painfulness of sorrow and insufficiency of prayer alone, he is ready to enter the path of self-renunciation, ready to purify his heart, ready to practice self-control, ready to become a spiritual athlete, and to develop that divine and invincible strength which is born of self-mastery.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that just paints your life, I mean, almost to the T.
Yeah.
I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? I know it was kind of long and there's a lot of parts there, but
Yeah.
overall, what do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I love like just self-mastery, like the way I would have thought about that years ago, right? Is like, what's my job? What's,
Yeah, right.
it's like,
Yeah.
again, it's these like achievements, and, self-mastery to me today is just like, do I know who I am?
Yeah.
And like
Love
that
that.
was the question that eluded me for 33 years.
Right.
I didn't know who I was,
Mhm.
like if you asked me, I'd probably give you a stock answer, but
Yeah.
I didn't know who I was,
Yeah.
I knew who I was pretending to be. I didn't know who I really was,
Yeah.
and like through this process, like I've truly learned who I am, like I'm someone that just cares about other people, and just wants to surround himself with like the good in life, and like, not be so focused on the things that maybe aren't going well,
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
there's so much good around us when we're willing to see it,
Yeah. Yeah. Beautifully said. The part in here I want to point out too, it says, he cries to God for help and there comes no answering comfort and no succor. And if you think about our lives, when you went to the hospital 14 times,
Yeah.
it's like, when's this dude going to change? And when's something going to be different? And,
Yeah.
in the big book, it says faith without works is dead.
Yeah.
So, but the opposite must be true.
Yeah.
Faith with works must be alive, right?
Yeah.
And the
I love
moment
that.
you said yes,
Yeah.
you even said it. You go, I don't know if it was God, my higher power,
Yeah.
whatever you may believe, but something was so different in you. You decided, like, I'm going down this road. I don't even know why I said yes, but I'm saying yes to this. Let's go. Right?
Yeah.
So you're doing your part. So there's a little
Yeah.
bit of faith, if you will,
Yeah.
that opened the door for
Yeah.
your higher power. Let's just say it, God,
Yeah.
if that's what it is, to open up this, I guess, road to change.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's things that have happened in my life, that don't have a human explanation.
Right.
Like all I know is my brain can't compute what happened that day. You can call it whatever you'd like,
Yeah.
but
that.
my human brain can't compute what happened that day,
Yeah.
but then there had to be action behind it,
Yeah.
and I talk to our clients about this all the time, right? Like we can go in a group and we can process the trauma and we can work through all these things and understand why we do what we do, like
Yeah.
I came to an understanding of why I do the things I do. and nothing would change if I just kept doing them. It's like I had to then take the action to try and do something different. And that was not an overnight process. It's taken me a long, and I'm still growing, and I will till I die. I'll keep growing in this area, right? But it's like when we learn that something doesn't work for us, it's like, can we take opposite action and actually do something about it? And that took me a while to figure out, but that was the start of it for me, was that moment, And I talked to my therapist, who was also my therapist here, about this a lot. And I say, I don't remember anything about our first appointment, but I remember telling you I'm 100% in, and if I say anything about my time in treatment, it's that I did it to the best of my ability every day, and I've reaped the rewards of that.
Well, and I can attest to that too, because, quickly when a client's not doing anything or if they're actually doing something. And I mean, you made it crystal clear just by your behavior and your actions when you got here. Okay, this dude's serious and he's going to put in the work. Everything I ever asked you to do, you did it, and you did it like above and beyond. And it was actually quite refreshing, because we don't always get that. What do you love most about you?
I think the thing I love the most about me is just the space I'm able to hold for other people, For so much of my life, when I was in my addiction, I was so focused on me, I wasn't capable of loving another person. I couldn't even love me, so how could I love another person? And this week we had somebody relapse that you and I are close with, and like, it hurts. It's really hurt me. And while that feels really bad at times, I'm also so grateful for that, having that feeling back. Like, I can love people and care about people again. And, when they triumph, I get this, like, I get goosebumps,
Yeah, totally.
It's like, I get goosebumps right now just thinking about like the triumphs I've seen, and when somebody has a step back, it hurts. And like, just knowing that I have that heart back, cause I lost it for a while, I couldn't love myself. I couldn't love others. And gosh, what better gift can you get back than like the ability to love yourself and love other people? Like, at the end of the day, like, that's what matters in life, is like the people we get to know along the way and our relationship with ourselves, Yeah, man,
that's a beautiful answer. Thank you. I wasn't expecting that answer. That was good. If there's someone right now, Blake, listening to your voice, and they're in a dark place and they're struggling, and they tuned into this because they need help, what would you tell that one person right now?
I've heard this question on your podcast a lot, so I thought about this, and the first thing I'd say is that, like, hope is not a 4-letter word, We're so scared to say that word.
Yeah, right.
Like, when you're so beaten down by life and you just don't know if you want to keep living, it's so scary to just find hope again. You've been hopeless for so long, that you're like, man, if I give it one more try and I fail, like, that's it for me,
Yeah.
And it's like, it's scary to embrace that hope again, because you worry about failing, and it's not a 4-letter word. Like, find places that will give you that hope. I found it here, but there's millions of places, where you can find your hope again. And you and I see it every day. People come in with this look on their face, like they just want to die,
Right.
And there's just no spark in them. And they start sharing their pain, and like the words that come out are like sharp, like a knife, it's just like, I'm like, no wonder you're hurting. Like, if you're carrying that around, like, your mind is your greatest prison. And if that's what's going on up there, like, no wonder you're in so much pain. And they share it with us. They share it with their group members. They start to free themselves of it.
Yeah.
And then some of them, like, they draw this line in the sand and they say, like, this is what happened to me, but I'm not going to be a victim to it. I'm going to be a survivor, And then they look at people like you and they're like, I want to be like Todd someday. And then they realize like Todd fell down once too, or a couple times, you know, and he got back up. And like, that's what matters, right? Is like, we all fall down in life. We all have our trials and tribulations, and we all fall down and we all beat ourselves up, you know, but look around you. And like, I guarantee you, the people you want to be like, the people you admire them because of how they picked themselves up from that bottom.
Exactly.
And you can be that person too, you know, like latch on to somebody who can restore that hope in you. And one day you're going to get to give that away. And that will be the greatest gift in your life, is the day you can say, I had no hope, I found it, and now I get to give it to somebody else. Like, what a beautiful life,
right?
You know?
Oh man, absolutely. I love that answer, by the way. And I think that's the beauty of going through something hard, because again, when we can relate with someone who's wrestling with the same stuff, again, they'll look at you even and go, man, how did he do this? And I mean, your turnaround is nothing short than a miracle. I mean, it is a freaking miracle.
Yeah.
And again, to be sitting here with you today is such an honor. And there you are living proof, because I can guarantee you, when someone sits on that couch on day one, I mean, you never would have thought you'd be here, right? Like,
I know.
And to see that, and I just want to make this clear for people listening to this, because I know a lot of Wasatch people, a lot of your former clients, a lot of people you know at Balance House, you're listening to this right now. If you think you can't turn your life around, that's the lie that's going to keep you stuck.
Yeah.
And again, I just admire just the work you put in. It's no accident. Like, this didn't get handed to you on a platter. You put in the work. And so just so much respect for you, Blake. Yeah. Seriously.
I love working with you. I love working here. And I love what you do on the podcast, you know.
Thank you.
I love that, like, people can find hope wherever they need to find it, you know. So
right on. Well, I can't thank you enough for taking some time out of your schedule to be with us today, and especially for our listeners. This is for them. It's not necessarily for Todd. Yet I get to sit with you face to face, so I guess I'm the luckiest one. But I know the listeners today were edified with your words, and you know, I just say keep doing what you're doing, because you're making a huge difference, and I see it every day here.
Yeah. Well, I hope to keep doing it for quite a while. So.
Yeah. Yep, you will be. I'll be working for you one day. I really see that in the future, but and I'd be happy to do that. But yeah, thank you, Blake.
Yeah.
If someone wants to reach out to you and maybe get to know you better, and maybe follow you even on some of your stuff that you're doing, or maybe even ask you a question, what would be the best way for them to do that?
So my email, blake.hunt3@gmail.com. Call me, 262-825-3873. I'm always willing to talk with people who are struggling or having success in life. Like, you know, we all do this together. I didn't do it alone. You didn't do it alone. And so we're always here for each other. I think I have an Instagram at Blake Hunt 33. It's a little dormant, but it's there.
I love how you say, I think I've got one. You don't hear that very often, right? But that's good though. You're spending less time on that, which is great.
Yeah.
Well, again, I'll put those links in the show notes so people can get right to it. But I encourage anyone listening who, if you want some advice even from Blake, reach out to him, and I'm sure he'd be happy to guide you in the right direction and help you any way you can. I see you take people under your wing all the time. You sponsor people. You're just passionate about making a difference in the world, and it's so beautiful.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. And again, thanks to my sponsors for supporting this great cause that we're doing here. And if you are struggling, please reach out. Either reach out to Blake. You can reach out to me. We're here to help you, and we love you. And we want you to get through whatever you're going through. So until next time, everybody, again, thanks, Blake.
Thanks, Todd.